Wonderful. Thank you. And let's just make sure that this, perfect. Clicker works as well. Good morning, everyone. First thing first, as always, thank you for having me here. It's a complete honor. This is my third time speaking here, and I am consistently grateful for you all. You're always very warm, always very inviting, so thank you. And most importantly, thank you for listening with your ears and your hearts. The information era. Maybe error, depending on who you ask. You know, right now we live in an abundance of this information. Anything you want, you can gather, order, send, connect, just from the phone in your pocket. So this abundance of information is almost everywhere across this planet. However, we still live with a scarcity mindset. Abundant information, scarcity mindset. I know that at some point we needed that scarcity mentality. There's so much of us that still live with the ancestors that came before us. Our ancestors before had a task to look across the desert or the forest or the plains and see predator or prey. And if they were able to respond to that accordingly, their tribe, their group, their gathering was safe, and they procreated. So that scarcity mentality was rewarded. But we don't live in a scarcity environment anymore. We have all this information available to us at any given moment, but somehow we still worry about the fear of where we are and what's out there. I get that. But times have changed. Sometime after that ancestor, one person took a seed and put it in the ground. And when they put that seed in the ground, crops grew. And they did that again and again and again until they could maximize their output. And then they brought on people to help them do that. And then someone else down the way said, you know what? I have something as well that I do. I have crops that I could maybe trade with you. What do you say we meet up once a week and we trade these? So they did that. And on top of trading crops, they also traded information. More information traded, more maximizing your output. Until time comes that they trade enough information that something as simple as crops became farms. Houses became warehouses. Tools became machines. And we took those warehouses and we filled more people in it and told them, you know what? We'll have you do the work. You start at this time of day. You go to lunch at this time of day. You go home this time of day. And don't worry about your kids. We'll put them in another warehouse and we'll explain to them how to grow up, and they'll abide to the same exact time schedule. And then from that seed that was planted of the agricultural era came this mighty oak tree of the industrial era. And what did we do with that? We maximized as much information as possible, and then we shared as much information as possible. Until time comes that that tool that became a machine became a computer. Hardware to software. And what did we do then? We filled it with more information. Until finally, all of history's information can fit in something as small as a cell phone. So we did it. We figured it out, right? I mean, information is the point of answering the unknown. We know more now. Shouldn't we all be happy? I think about this precious story that comes up for me whenever I go out into the world, because when I go out, things that I hear are stuff like, we are more divided than ever. It's never been worse. It's us versus them. But then I remember this story of this traveler who's passing through a village, and he comes across and stumbles on this open land of workers toiling away. And he decides to gather some wisdom of the people of the land. He walks over to one of them and he says, "Good day, sir. How are you doing and what are you doing?" This man has a shovel in his hand and he plops it down to the ground. He turns over to our traveler and he says, "I'm digging holes. Yeah, I got calluses on my hands and my lower back is killing me and it's really hot out here. You know, I've been doing this for weeks. I'll be doing it for weeks to come. So please, if you don't mind, I'd like to get back to my job." Our traveler doesn't get any information from that, right? So he keeps walking. He goes a little further down. He walks upon another group of men working, and the first person he can speak to, he says, "Excuse me, how are you doing and what are you doing?" This man has a bucket in his hand, and he plops that down on the ground. He turns to our traveler, and he says, "I'm filling holes with cement. Yeah, I got it in my shoes. It's in my nails. Because it's so hot out here, what of it is in my hair is going to be dry by noon. Now, listen, I've been doing this for weeks. I'll be doing it for weeks to come. Please, if you don't mind, I'd like to get back to my job." I told this story once, and a 12-year-old kid in the audience said, "Rude," which I thought was great. Unfortunately for our traveler, though, he didn't have access to Yelp at the time, so he couldn't leave a customer service review for the poor customer service, right? But he keeps walking nonetheless until he comes upon another group of workers. He walks up to the first one, a little disenchanted this time, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, how are you doing and what are you doing?" This man is knee-deep in cement, and he's backing himself away from it while smoothing it out with one of those flatteners, the trowel. He plops that down, puts his hands on his hips, and he goes, "You know, this is a lot of work. I'm knee-deep in cement. It's hot out here. I've been doing this for weeks. I'll be doing it for weeks to come, but I tell you what, we are building a cathedral." Our traveler recognized one individual who saw the work that's being put in the here and now and recognized the totality of the picture of the work being done in this world. This final man said to himself, "You know, what's a couple of weeks, maybe years of work for the family who sits in that cathedral?" And they find solace. They take their kids there and they find peace. And those kids take their kids there and they find enlightenment. What's a little cement in my shoes for that? So bringing that back to the gathering of information for today. How does that line up with us? Well, I'm glad you all heard me ask me that question. Because there's a lot of abundant information. And I'll start with this one. Did you know that violent crimes have been almost halved in the United States since the 90s? That's right. From 1995, it has almost decreased, and this goes up to 2017. It's still going down. Now, did CNN have this as a conversation piece? I must have missed it if they did. Did you know that world poverty is lower than you think? When asked, 70% of people said it had increased. 18% said it stayed the same, and 13% said it decreased. That 13% was right. It has decreased from the 90s until 2015 and now today from a little under 30% to 10%. We have world poverty going down while population is going up, if we can. Did MSNBC tell you about this? I didn't see it. The 24-hour news cycle, perhaps maybe they said it when I wasn't watching. Did you know we have decommissioned 85% of the nuclear warheads? In the 80s, there was a little under 70,000. Today, a little over 9,000. It's 9,000 too many, but you see the trajectory of where it's going. Now, I tell myself, Fox News probably has this information, and they're going to share it with us this week. Did you know the global effort to restore forestation on the planet is on mark to hit their goal in the next 5 years? Multiple companies came together, including the Bond Challenge, and they decided to reforest the planet. By the way, forestation cleans up about 40% of human emissions. And they're going to hit their mark in the next 5 years. I'm curious if we saw this on CBS, NBC, ABC, WWE, MLB, BMW, YMCA, you name it, so on and so forth. Here's a few more, if I may switch to the button, which is not. There we are. That was you. These are a few more things going up in the world. Life expectancy, investments in renewable energy, health spending, people living in a democracy, literacy, electricity access. All of these are going up, up, up. None of them are being talked about on the main news sources. Again, 24-hour news sources. I think they can find time to mention this little tidbit. If all of this doesn't convince you enough, here is potentially one more. I misspoke, 12 more. Good data, real data, true data. Quick question. Why is this not talked to us? Why is this not told to us? Why is this not shown to us? Why is the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads, the leading phrase? I tell you, there's a realization from people who gathered information for the last 100 years about the scarcity mentality that we have. Because again, it was rewarded at some point. And then they feed into that by giving us information that makes us feel more scared. What's the thing to worry about across the street? You watch KTLA, they'll talk about a car chase or a burglary that, as sad as it can be, doesn't affect every single individual. But all of these stats that I've shown do. It's not being talked about. If it bleeds, it leads. And what's more is I'm not here to blame the media either, because they're speaking from a scarcity mentality also. They have a status quo. They want to maintain it. They do not want to lose it. So I'm not here to blame, because blame is not productive. Blame causes anger. And when you're angry, you don't see clearly. What's more is that destruction is loud. Progress is quiet. Trees out here right now, if they were to fall, we would hear it. We would go outside. We would go check for damage. But right now, that same tree is growing. Nobody says a word. Progress is quiet. Destruction is loud. And the media source leans into that. But if progress is quiet within an abundant information society, we don't have to be as quiet as we need to be anymore. Next slide, please. Here's a few ways we can start by working together with the abundant information that we have without relying on the gatekeepers from past times. This is B Corporation. This is a company that sets a framework for any company to be able to make profit while still paying and treating their employees fairly, making sure that their output is healthy for the environment, and thirdly, holding their investors and stakeholders and shareholders accountable. Saying that if you're going to invest in us, your ethics need to match ours. If a company fulfills those, B Corporation gives them a stamp to go on their product, their brick and mortar, or on their website. And then we can go to B Corporation, put any category you want of furniture, food, clothes, books, so on and so forth. And we can find the companies that treat people well. Because regardless of what political landscape you lay on, right, left, or cultural landscape, or geographical, I think we all want to make sure that American citizens and employees are being treated well. That comes first. Next slide, please. Did you know the Los Angeles Department of Aging has started giving seniors free food, free health, free care, and free rides since the pandemic? Never mentioned on the news whatsoever. About a month and a half ago when the fires were going on, I've been doing a lot of podcast interviews. And anytime I mention that I lived in Los Angeles, they would say to me, "Is LA still there? The news says that it's gone." I think as Angelenos, we all see that we're all pretty much here still. At least I feel here. What's more is that we as Angelenos stick together. We help each other out. When I was helping and asking and checking on my neighbors in my neighborhood, and I'm on the street clearing debris for traffic to go by, not a single iota of a time, did I stop and say, before I help you, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Because I'm a human being, that's why. And to be more specific, I'm a conscious being having a human experience. I watch this body change, and my thoughts and my emotions and my memories and my feelings and my beliefs, they change over time. My consciousness is eternal. And that's where I resonate from. And that transcends left wing, right wing, cultural, geographical, ideological divides. But the news will tell you that LA's gone. Next slide, please. This is Goods Unite Us. This is an app. You can download this app, look up the majority of big companies, and find out where they put their dollars politically. To the left, to the right, maybe a bit of both, or my personal favorite, not at all. Majority of companies are on this app, and it's growing. And if you don't see the company, you can message them and hopefully get one put up there. That's how we vote with our dollars. Instead of waiting every 2 years or every 4 years, we can vote every single day for the betterment of the American people, for the betterment of the globalization of this planet. That is your fourth principle as UU members. That also is your fifth one as well, the right to conscience and the use of democratic process. It's baked right into this. And what's more is that we can use this to make sure we start bringing down the barriers between one side and the other. Because my goodness, we are human beings here. And we are more alike than what they tell us. Next slide, please. If any of this stuff resonates with you, please, I highly recommend you scan this QR code. It goes to my website, and I send out newsletters, 2 to 5 a month, with good data source information that's going on in the world that affects you, that affects us. I also send links that way we can vote with her and connect each other more. This is where the beginning of new globalization and the information era can go. We are not relied anymore on those gatekeepers who hold information. They don't even have the keys anymore, let alone is the gate even there. We are in a time now where the abundant information should be matched with the abundant mindset that we have here. For Christ's sake, you can go on Amazon and order goats to eat your lawn as lawn care. Where's the scarcity in that? This is in itself all of those websites that I showed you, and the newsletter I send out, and the good news happening, our access to it is the capital D in democracy of a capitalistic society. And we can do this every single day. Because remember, progress still happens, even if it's quiet. And it has a liberal bias because progress is by change. And change brings diversity. And if you lean into default on the side of progress. But it's very quiet. I'm a black man. I'm a Spanish man. I grew up in the South. My father is a black Southern Democrat. Within me every single day, and I was still able, mind you, to be able to drive from Jacksonville, Florida to Los Angeles. Never knowing anybody, never been here before, slept in my car for 2 weeks, and learned how to create a living experience for myself here. 10 years later, I'm self-employed. This black man couldn't do that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 400 years ago. Any traveling I would have done would have been in shackles and on a boat. So let's not forget, progress is still here. And we are not powerless. The things we can do of finding out what more we have in common, the things that we can do of recognizing that we are conscious beings having a human experience, which gives us a sliver of space between what we want and what peace brings. The fact that we can connect here and have this dialogue and share more information lets me know progress is still here. And the fact that in this society, a capitalistic society, that we can vote with our dollars now with full information lets me know progress is still here. It's just quiet. So let's hold on to that thought and take that into your day. And when you go into that day, remember, you're not just digging holes to fill it with cement, to smoothen it out. You, my friends, every one of you, are building a cathedral. Thank you for your time.